Welcome to Midnight Madness. We're doing the readings for Earth signs for Sun, Moon and Rising in Taurus, Virgo and Capricorn. And so we're doing this on an Aquarian moon. We're moving into a Piscean moon, which is watery. So most people will be very emotional during this time. The first card we've got is Justice, which is to do with legal proceedings. So maybe you're going through a court case or having to stand up in court and justify or be an activist for someone in court who needs support. You might be signing a will, you might be signing a lease to a house, or validating the birth of a child, or something to do with a legal situation. So I'm just going off what the energy is, Justice card, or you may feel like you've had an injustice in your own life. Something that needs to be remedied and you're looking for justice for someone else. It's possible as well. And justice can come up as an 11 and sometimes an 8. Be an advocate for truth, making well thought out plans. Maybe you're signing on for a new job, which would mean documentation, or you're documenting on someone being a nurse. Your beliefs or your priorities, remember to be impartial and objective. And whatever you judge, be compassionate. Legal rulings. The sword is only to who are worthy and true of heart. You rush yourself upon the sword when you enter a circle, when you're a gifted medium. And the Eight of Swords is usually uses anathema, a sword. They will stab themselves first and show their loyalty in order to show that they are not fearful of death. Back in the old day. You are known as the Prince of Autumn, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn energy. You're dependable, you're protective, you're chivalrous, you're humorous, you're very cautious, and you have meticulous attention to detail, and you have kindness to others. You may be very wary of trusting people. Virgo energy is the quiet defender. Taurus energy is the nurturer. So you could either have both of those qualities in your chart. You may be very nurturing, but attention to detail and trying to figure out someone. Being a nurse, you have to observe and you have to document, and you're trying to figure out if that person's okay to look after themselves or not as a nurse. So documentation is crucial, and so observation is crucial. That's what it's talking about. So in the past you went through a court case that needed to balance out some people's energies and situations, and maybe you had issues with your own sexuality, with it being male or feminine energy. You may have been too male in situations and needed to be more feminine. So instead of being so critical, you should have been more nurturing, and so that can rub people the wrong way. But this is your nature. You have a lot of masculine in your chart, possibly. In the past, you had 3 jobs to choose from, 3 possibilities to choose from, and you're going to run into someone from your past that's someone who's going to help you in this circumstance. Someone that is your past person that was a friend may come in and point out some areas that you don't see with your own eyes. So sometimes you need a second person's advice in order to see something that you don't see. In the future, you have the 10 of Pentacles, which is money. Usually this is from a death of someone or an inheritance, or you've inherited certain psychic abilities that may have come down from generational. Most people call people that are schizophrenic, ADHD, and that special needs. They're not special needs, they are very, very psychic. Most kids I've dealt with, including my own, are actually very psychic. So you've got to understand they're reading the room, they're reading the person, they're assessing the situation before they speak, before they trust, before they even engage. Put that plus add on a secondary problem. You have asthma, which is a lack of oxygen to the brain, which is a lack of thought processing. So that may stop a thought processing and learning development because you have lack of oxygen to the brain, which would then hinder your progress at school. So a kid with special needs as well as asthma is going to look like he performs below par when in fact it's just a lack of oxygen to the brain. This is just from my observations on my own children, and he's really smart but doesn't know it, but used to think that he was below par because his brother didn't have asthma. Again, it's the lack of oxygen. So then we've got this walking away vibe. Eight of Cups is putting all your money and all your possessions into a storage unit, and you're just going to let it sit there. And you know you want to make a major life choices. You know you want to move cities, states and countries, but you're just letting it sit there and make it, like a place where you can put it there before you decide where you want to go. So this is just deciding where you want to go. You know that it's time to move on, but you're not sure where to. And so the storage unit is a way to store the things you might need in the future for your children or for yourself. It's like a fixed term deposit. So you're investing into that until you know your next move. And you've got Victory, 6 of Spring. Someone's going to toot your own horn, give you a tic-tac parade, or like Andrew Johns did when he first won the 1997 Knights Cups against whoever it was. And so there's some sort of formal recognition for all you've been through, and you just don't really acknowledge it or want it because you don't like the spotlight. I'm one of those people who likes to work behind the scenes. I've got Scorpio energy strong in my chart. And yes, I have seen COVID and I saw Black Rights Matters and I saw all those things, but I didn't want to advertise it, and I went through a person that was my psychologist who was part of Vocal for Victims of Crime, and I asked her to leak the information to the right authorities. I didn't want to be known, I didn't want to be acknowledged, I just wanted to hide under my bushel because it all happened under the influence of a medication that didn't agree with me. So I felt like I didn't deserve the accolades because it was from a medication that didn't agree with me. And yes, I saw things that I didn't want to see, and yes, that impacted on my children and my parents and my family, but I wanted to make sure that what I saw got recognised, got listened to and stopped. We got further ahead with our vaccinations and our lack of COVID because I saw this long before it happened, and I asked her to warn the Prime Minister, that would be Scott Morrison at the time, so that we didn't have this epidemic that was so big in Europe, because we had the knowledge of what I saw. And so I wanted to prevent that happening, and I wanted to put us in a better situation. I said, please tell the right people. And of course, being a psychologist, she would have had to have told the right people. Regardless of how nuts she thought I was, she acted on it. And so when we talked about it, when it happened, during COVID, and we were in lockdown, and I was at uni, and I was crying to her, and I was so upset because I'd seen it, and she thought I was nuts, and then all of a sudden she realised I wasn't. And then it came this recognition of, oh my God, this whole time, this person I was judging was actually telling the truth and actually saw this stuff. And it could have prevented so many people's deaths, stopped so many people's lives from being taken, because I saw it firsthand at my mother's house. And so she was flabbergasted like I was. And then all of a sudden she was so caring and so empathetic, and we were crying because I said, I'm so sorry that I was right and I didn't want to be right, but I was right. And she said, I know you were right, and I told the right people. It was just a moment in my life where I thought, this is what I was meant to do. I was born for this reason. For, what good or bad reasons I was born. But this was the reason I was born, to alert people, to stop a pandemic, in a sense, because I alerted her. It was, my whole reason for existence was based on what happened to me when I died. 3 or 4 times. So the 4th time that I died, at a house I lived at, that's when I saw all these things. And I was fast forward into future time, and I came back to warn people in this time. And so I'm really glad that I had that ability. And so I've hated that I had this ability my whole life, but I had a use for it. I actually had a use for what I did, and I could speak my truth. And finally, someone would listen, and someone would go, she's not nuts. She actually has a gift. She's not crazy. She's normal. But she sees things long before it happens. It was so liberating to know that I was no longer a freak of nature, but I was actually a psychic medium, and I saw something that no one else would see. Like in the movie The Butterfly Effect with, what's his name? Famous actor, Ashton Kutcher, where he sees things long before it happens. It's called the ripple effect. It's a real thing. I've actually researched it. And I saw this stuff and I thought, am I crazy? Am I nuts? And everyone thought I was. I was in the psych ward for months. And then finally when it came to light that I was actually seeing something that actually happened, and it was 6 years in front. I think I saw it in 2018. So it would have been 2 years in front. I'm about 2 years out. And so I saw all these things, and maybe we stopped most of COVID because of what I'd seen. Thanks to the fact that they drugged me up on things that didn't work for me or didn't help me at all, mentally, physically, or didn't agree with my system. And so, you know, I still have a beef with the Mater Hospital for giving me that stuff that made me see and hallucinate and stuff. But if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have seen and saw the stuff that was coming for Australia, for the world. So in a way, as much as I was allergic and I didn't forgive them for giving me that medication, it made me see something that was 2 years in front, and I warned the world through my sessions with my psychologist, who had to, by law, tell the authorities of what I'd seen. I said, please tell someone, because I'm really scared this is going to happen. And she did. She said, I alerted the people. She did alert the right authorities. And then it happened. So I don't regret my decision. What I regret was being drugged up to the eyeballs. The last card we've got is the Ten of Cups. This is family harmony. So somehow you're burying the hatchet with people from your family who may have, again, stuck you under lock and key and admitted you to a psych ward like I was, and you just felt vulnerable and you felt like you weren't loved, like you were the crazy person, because they didn't know what to do with you. You couldn't be yourself. You weren't yourself. You were not normal. They had nowhere else to put you, so they put you there. Maybe you're learning to forgive their transgressions of putting you in a psych ward. Maybe you haven't yet forgiven most of it, but you're trying to, because based on what they had to go off was the way that they dealt with it, because they didn't know how to help you. So this is the deck of the Fairy Tarot by Doreen and Radleigh Valentine. The next deck is the Fairy Oracle, Earth Signs, by Lucy Cavendish and Selina Fenech. So this is like a clarifying card. Oh, there you go. It just flew out. We've got Light the Darkness. Oh, this is nice. It's a good card to pull. I got that when I was young. I was trying to pull someone out of their thought pattern. Not everyone wants to get out of their thought pattern. And the next card I pulled, oh, yeah, no, I already have that card. We're going to throw that back in. Oh, here we go. Sticky. Gossamer Princess. So we're going to go off that. Gossamer Princess is 12. Communication, relationship work to be done. So because it is communication between yourself and others at the heart of the card, you may be experiencing communication difficulties. Your phones may not work. The web may be playing up. Your email's not working. My phone's not working right now. Relationships might be fraught with trivial misunderstandings leading to fallouts that are unworthy of both parties. Consider spending time with people you have not seen for some time, and know that whatever you decide, it is worth spending just a little time to assess the relationship's meaning to you. Connect with others to feel less isolated. Share your creations and your thoughts and feelings. The need to talk through issues affecting yourself and others. Sharing your truth with respect and waiting for another to make the first move in communications. The web of family, of life between friends and species, interrelationships. This is always a possibility to recreate the web. Endings and gentle separations, end of one part of life, coming from one stage to another, coming into initiation stage, which is coming out of being a young child and being an adult. And so the light talks about listen to elders, find a playful, wise elder from who you can learn from. Seek out relatives and ancestor wisdom. I had my auntie as a young child. Search through your family tree for evidence of the magics within you. They are there. Old wise ones have messages for you, and you can learn much from them. Allow them to pass on their wisdom to you so a living tradition continues. Understand that you come from a long line of wise ones, psychic mediums, and connect with those elders. A chance encounter with an older person gives you much to think about. You will learn a great deal at this time if you connect with older people, nursing homes, etc. Do not be afraid of growing older. You will never die. Your light will be passed on, and your soul spark will return to source, to starfire, to be renewed again, only as you agree to it. Yeah, energy just shifts and changes. It doesn't actually die. When Olivia Newton-John died, I went, oh cool, she's up in heaven now. She's going to be ministering from there, because she was also part of the Max Born Newton-John special circle of individuals that were beyond and above most individuals' knowledge of the world, because they were a secret society. So Max Born and Isaac Newton, which is Olivia Newton-John's great-grandfather, and other German ancestry also looked into, and they had writings about light and dark and electricity and writings and teachings. And so Olivia grew up in a household that was a very, very academic household, but she felt ignored because the people that birthed her were so smart. She felt the need to stand out, so she went to singing. And again, if you think about it, singing is also part of the knowledge of the Akashic knowledge, where runes were first developed, and a sacred text was developed in the Arabic South African runes, which talks about alchemy and talks about changing things in this spiritual path through writing words in a certain way, a symmetry, geomancy, it's called geomancy, hydromancy, apothesy, and theopathy. Apothesy is talking about plant therapy. Theopathy is talking about thought therapy. I've got it written down. It's very interesting, but it basically talks about other people's ideas on how to write magic. So geomancy was a language that was used in the African Arabic language. Hydromancy is controlling water. Geomancy, remote viewing, Russell Targ and Harold Puthor, and pyromancy is controlling fire. So it was an ability to control the elements, fire, water, earth and wind. And it talks about Hindu, Buddhist and Theosophy. Madame Blavatsky wrote Isis Unveiled in the Secret Doctrine and about remote viewing and atoms. Richard Wiseman wrote about anthroposophy, a spiritual world accessible to humans, German religion that works with plant therapy, which is what Olivia Newton-John was working with. And they were the founders of the things called the Steiner schools, which taught kids that had special needs on how to learn in a different way, because they had a curriculum they had to follow. Not every kid followed that curriculum. And Mr. Steiner, this young guy called Rudolf Steiner, walked out one day and said, I'm not going to do this. This doesn't work for me. I can't learn this way. And he developed his own line of special needs schools called the Steiner schools, and things like Montessori. So Maria Montessori also looked at things like anthropology and how our environment shapes us, and how a kid that has access to his own place to work from, that was his own station with his own things, made him work better, learn better, because he was working from a sense of his own space. It was a person-based theology of that if someone was put in a certain environment that they created for themselves, they would far outdo the other students that were the mainstream, even though they were called, stupid and slow. They weren't stupid and slow. They just had a certain way of learning. And so that was back in the 1800s when that wasn't even thought of. These people went outside of the box and tried to find ways of teaching these children who obviously had issues on how to learn. And so things like biodynamic farming came into things, and using the moon in order to plant certain plants or foods in order for it to make it grow. Gillette, I used to work for, used to harvest their herbal plants on a full moon in order so the potency was more accurate on a full moon, because when it wasn't accurate, it wasn't at full strength. So Rudolf Steinman also introduced anthroposophic or anthropology products. And so he's got a range of vitamins called Wendell. Is it Wendell? I've looked online. Weleda products that are naturopathic medicines. And in the leading countries of the world, like France, they all use naturopathic therapies alongside of medication. So that way, the person gets the whole person-related or individual person-related prescription for their condition. And they really do go back to basics with natural therapies. And that's what Olivia got through. That's why Olivia lasted so long, because she had a husband that had studied Amazon natural therapies, and he was working with natural therapies. Again, it's the Scientology movement, but he was working with these therapies that prolonged her life. So these are real things. I don't believe medication is for long term. I think people get harmed from that. It's a short term fix. People are lazy. They don't want to fix their problem, and their problem is psychological. They're drinking, they're taking drugs, they're whatever. They need to get to the basics, and what it is breaking down the fact that you don't need medication long term. You don't need 16 medications to get well. You need to go to 16 medications for the interim and then wean yourself off it and go to the natural therapies, which is why I like to work for a compounding pharmacist or compounding chemist, because they are looking at the whole body, mind and soul. They're not just looking at the medicines they can throw at them and make them addicted to. I don't agree with that. So Olivia Newton-John was of my mindset that we all are individuals and we need to look at plant therapy. And that's all I have for you, Earth Signs. Thank you.